Too Scared to Cry is a foster care memoir from Maggie Hartley. This was originally released in 2018, and I've recently reread it, and I have to say it's quite interesting. This is actually part of a short story collection. It was published alongside two others. I have reviewed the other two, The Girl No One Wanted and A Family for Christmas, so I am just focusing specifically on Too Scared to Cry. But if you're interested in knowing whether the short story collection as a whole is worth it, absolutely. So this is a short story. I'd say it's maybe a half an hour, 40-minute read. It's not tremendously short. I would have liked it to have been a little longer because I was really enjoying it, but at the same time, I think the whole story was told. I never felt like anything was rushed. I don't feel like anything was missing out. And it's about these three young children who stay with Maggie because their teachers at school or preschool are worried about some bruises that they've seen. And one of the children in particular, I can't remember if it was Ben or Damien. I think one's 3 and one's 4. Forgive me if that's not 100% correct. But they're very young children, and one of them also said something that was a little bit worrying. And they have contact with their parents, but when they're with their parents, they're silent. They don't make a sound. They are terrified because it seems like if they, well, in the book, their father was described as having a Victorian attitude to upbringing, where children should be seen and not heard, and that is so obvious from the beginning with the way these children react to things or don't react, as the case may be, because they've been so frightened into being silent. Because clearly, if they ever make a sound, they're beaten up, and that's heartbreaking. And part of the book's really wonderful to read because we get to see how Maggie is able to slowly bring them out of their shells and slowly encourage them to be children. But every time they go to contact with their parents, it's like they reverse everything Maggie's done. Even if it's only temporary, it shows that that damage can't just be wiped away. And the child who's most affected is Noah, who is a little baby. I can't remember exactly how old he is, but he's less than a year. And quite scarily, he is non-responsive, he's silent, he doesn't cry, he doesn't respond to anything. And as Maggie said at one point in the book, the only reason she knew he was alive was because he would blink every now and then, and of course his chest rises with his breathing. And that must be so terrifying to have a baby who doesn't respond to anything. And it's unclear how deep rooted that damage is, or if Maggie is going to be able to bring him out of his shell. But it's very unclear, and it was fascinating and frustrating at times when they kept having to have contact with their parents. The children are all really likable, really sweet children, and it's so lovely to see, particularly the older two, slowly learning to play, learning to be children again. But it is heartbreaking, particularly with Noah, and I can't even imagine what that must be like. And it must be difficult to care for a baby who doesn't cry, who doesn't tell you when they need something. You just have to go by routine and hope that you're feeding them when they're hungry, because he can't say when he's hungry, and it's potentially physically dangerous for the child as well. And to think that a father would do that to their own child, it's just disgusting. So it's not the easiest read. It's not the most shocking. There are certainly more horrific foster care memoirs that are more challenging to read, but at the same time, it's not easy. So if you prefer the foster care memoirs that are about children in care because of their behaviour, or because, perhaps something has happened to their parents, this isn't one of those. This is one where it is definitely about abuse and neglect and how that can affect children. It is difficult to read, but it's worth it to see the support networks that are in place, to see how these things can really benefit children once they're in the foster system. And I won't say what happens with their care plan, but I will say that I enjoyed the book for all of the right reasons. I think it's very eye-opening and revealing about the treatment of some children, and yeah, it is difficult to read in places, but it's worth it. It is a short story, as I said, half an hour, 40 minutes, depending on your reading pace. But again, as I said, it doesn't feel rushed. I don't feel like we weren't given enough information. I felt, satisfied with the read by the end of it. So it may not be the longest, but actually it's very enjoyable for the right reasons, very well written, moving when it needs to be, emotional at times. All things considered, it ticks every box, and I'm very happy to recommend Too Scared to Cry as a separate story. But also, if you read it as part of the short story collection with the other two, with The Girl No One Wanted and A Family for Christmas, it's a pretty decent collection and one that I'd be very happy to recommend.